Man, the madness has arrived. It's March Madness. I'm Scott Spreitzer. You see Griffin Murphy. You see Raphael Esparaza. And we are brought to you by DocSports.com. We are in the paint. We got a few weeks to go, fellas, on Tuesdays. We're positioned well, if you will, for these shows because once we get into the big dance, we'll be able to talk about these games a day and a half or two before they get going. So I'm looking forward to that. We're going to talk about 5 conference tournament games over the next couple of days before we jump into them. Real quick note, if you're not yet a member at DocSports.com, just want to give it a trial run, click on that link below the video. Get yourself set up for a free $60 account. You can use those free $60 on any of our daily packages over at DocSports.com. Any of these beautiful faces staring at you, you can use them on all 3. Look at that smile. My gosh, the pearly whites from Griffin. Guys, I want to talk about the games in just a bit, as you guys do also. Anything different that you look for when it comes to these conference tournaments, I'll give you my thoughts. But, you know, Raphael started off, man. Is there anything that you're looking to do differently than you do in the regular season?
But first of all, I can't believe Gonzaga was a favorite today against St. Mary's. All the St. Mary's done was beat them not once but twice this year. I have the Gales to win the Western Conference at plus 180, so I'm looking for a nice hedge ticket as a live bet this one. But I'm excited for the Big 12. I know everyone can't wait to see Houston. Houston, a number 1 seed. Yeah. I think if they lose a game in a conference early, they're still going to get a number 1 seed. So I think Houston maybe backs off a little bit, maybe rests some players. That's why BYU, a great number. Iowa State, a great number. Even Kansas, we've all 3 of us have made fun the whole season of college basketball. They could be a surprise team. So I'm excited to watch the Big 12 just because I think someone else cuts down the nets besides Houston.
We're going to talk about 5 games coming up in just a minute, Griffin. SEC, Big Ten battle, all that kind of stuff. But anything you do differently now than you would have done 2 weeks ago, let's say?
Absolutely, Scott. And the biggest thing, honestly, is looking at how teams play on the road, because obviously once you enter the tournament, everything's neutral site. And once you get into that aspect, it's really critical to look at, see how teams play on the road. Like we're going to talk about Iowa, for instance, and they're absolutely terrible on the road. So I like to get into how teams play on the road, and then I like to see their trends when they play on the road. I also like to see how teams play against AP top 25 teams as well. When you get a good grasp around that, and you could kind of see how teams have performed against other ranked teams going into matchups, it gives you a much better incentive of how to go about it, Scott.
Yeah, you know, I look at a lot, and people, you can do this. You can Google this stuff. You can see, like, you know, points per 100 possessions scored or allowed away from home. And you can separate it like that, like Griffin's saying, and get a good idea of how these teams play, whether they be on neutral courts or in a true road, game. Like some of these minor conferences will play those true road games and have home teams. Real quick note that I like to do during the course of the conference tourneys that we don't get to do during the regular season, because teams don't play each other 3 times during the regular season. But I love to look at those teams that have won the first 2 meetings, the 2 regular season meetings. It's not automatic that revenge is coming. And what I like to do is go into a couple of sites that I use that really breaks down the metrics. And some of that has to do with what you just said, Griffin, when it comes to how teams fare away from home rather than on the road. But if I wrote on other way around, how they fare on the road rather than at home. And when I was, you find some instances where you'll see a couple of games that were maybe decided by 6 or 7 points with the same team winning both games. You jump on those metrics and you're like, God, if these guys played 100 times, they'd win by 12 or more 90 of those times. And you play that team again to win that 3rd game of the season. And generally they'll do so. Of course, the great equalizer is that point spread, like guys like Raphael and those other evil people behind the counter put out and throw at us. But but you can find instances where you play that team to win that 3rd game. So don't think automatic revenge. And a real quick note as far as trends and angles, I'm not a trend guy over the course of a regular season. However, that can change a little bit with logical trends in the NBA, the NFL, college basketball postseason. And an example would be like the Mountain West Conference, which starts on Wednesday. Certain favorites have been serious moneymakers for 14 years. Favorites of less than 6 points in that conference are a 65% cover the last 65 times they've played in that situation. Now, I don't really look at trends in the big conferences because there's a lot of transfers nowadays. But in those minor conferences, the Big West, some of those Mountain West teams, things of that nature, you're getting teams that had, a decent amount of players coming back from the previous season without a whole bunch of transfers throw it into the mix so you can kind of use those things. So just some thoughts for everybody from all three of us on handicapping conference tournaments. And then, of course, next week we'll be jumping into big dance handicapping thoughts. But, guys, let's see if we can put it to use here with a couple of SEC games in Nashville on Wednesday. Let's start with LSU and Mississippi State, guys. Last check, we're doing this about 6 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday. About an hour prior to showtime, Miss State was 8.5, 147.5. Griffin, kick things off for us, the Tigers and the Bulldogs.
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. And I mean, this LSU team, they've had a brutal season. What a letdown. They're 3 games below 500. And on top of that, going right back to where my system is, 2-8 on the road this season. LSU, they're also coming into this matchup on a 5-game losing streak. And Mississippi State, they've been pesky as all hell all season long. And they've got some solidified wins this season over Ole Miss and Texas A&M. Mississippi State, they're better across the boards in my eyes. They're better on the rebounds. They clean up on second chances. And this team's actually ranked 46th in the nation across offensive points per game. Josh Hubbard, he's an absolute beast. I just don't see how LSU is going to compete with this Bulldogs team offensively. I think Mississippi State's going to blow them out here by double digits. We have a current line sitting at minus 8.5. I'm laying the points here with the Bulldogs in this one, Scott.
Raphael, your thoughts?
I agree. This LSU team, thank God LSU men's baseball team is really good because their men's sports team has not been faring well. LSU baseball is just crushing if you want to get there. If you see them anything lower than minus $3 or lower in baseball, take a shot at that one. But yeah, this basketball team is just horrendous. Mississippi State has covered 5 straight games against LSU, and you know LSU is going to get out-rebound and out-hustled, and especially in the second half. LSU is like MIA in the second half. So I think M State could be easily double-digit win. I'm going to wait for a live bet. I don't like the 8.5. I think they do win by double digits, but I'm hoping maybe LSU maybe, up by 2, up by 3 really early, and I can get maybe like a 6 or 6.5. But I don't know. 8.5. It's been staring at me all day with the middle finger saying, bet me, bet me. So I'm going to see if I can get a 6 number. But I'm with Griffin. I think Mississippi State mops them up.
All right, money shots we usually save for the end of the show, but I'm going to throw mine out there because this is the game that is my money shot for the show, and that would be Mississippi State laying the points. And I like your thoughts too, Raphael, about, man, if they get down by a couple of buckets early, you can come in and do some live wagering. SEC tourney favorites, significant favorites like this one, have been outstanding the last 10 years in the tournament against the spread. And Miss State has a couple of big physical bodies. LSU early this season, they lost to Jalen Reed, their big guy, and they just haven't met their preseason potential because I think a lot of it has to do with, Reed being injured and missing a lot of games. Bulldogs won the regular season meeting by 12, 81-69. It was all Mississippi State in the second half. And I think they're going to get the job done here. And again, I made my number 9.5. I'm not usually a full point off on these games or a 1.5 off, but that's the case in this one. And I'm going to back Mississippi State. That's my money shot. The other guys are going to get to theirs at the end of the show. Let's stay in Nashville, SEC action, Oklahoma, Georgia. And right now, Georgia laying 2.5 to 3 points. That total sitting right around 148.5. Guys, Raphael, after starting 13-0 against the 320th ranked non-conference schedule, things got a little tough for the OU Sooners, but I like the way they finished with the wins over Texas and over Missouri to end the regular season and show some signs of life. Georgia won that regular season meeting a couple months ago, 72-62. The final score was their biggest lead of the entire game. It was closer than that final score. Raphael, your thoughts here?
Well, when I originally wrote down the number, I wrote down 6.5, but then I thought it was the football game of Georgia versus Oklahoma. So I had to go back and do more research for college basketball. But if you really listen quietly, you can hear a bubble pop because that's Oklahoma's bubble. They lose today, they're done. They're NIT bound. I think Georgia. I will tell you right now, I'm looking to maybe play this as one of my premium plays tomorrow. I think Georgia easily wins this one. They've won 4 straight, covered 5 straight games. And I just think Oklahoma, if they only play well when they're at home, they always get outplayed on the road, especially in a board game. And they shoot horrible free throws. Their free throw shooting has been pathetic in the second half of the season. So I think Georgia, I rate Georgia I'm like you. I'm using that a full point off or 2 points out. I made Georgia like a 4-point favorite. Wow. And they came out 2.5. So like I said, you guys get a sneak peek who's watching. This might be a premium play for me. So you got it for free. So I don't know why this number is going on this. So I like Georgia and a half on this one. I think the totals have been tad high. I made it 146.5. So I think the under is, and if you like Georgia, you need an under game. Because if it's a high scoring game, then I think the back door could be open and maybe Oklahoma can sneak one in. But I like Georgia in this one.
Raphael, you agree, or you like the other? I mean, Griffin, you agree, or you like the other side?
I agree. This is going to be one hell of a game. I mean, we've got Oklahoma, who thrives on the offensive side of the ball, and then Georgia, their lockdown defense. But listen, defense wins games. Obviously, neutral site in play, and just as Raphael said, Oklahoma is terrible on the road. They went 2-7 on the road this season. They have two guys that can really turn it on offensively, and that's Jeremiah Fears and Jalen Moore. If these two fail to execute on the pick and roll, Georgia is going to shut them down with size. Kane and Lawrence are going to be critical on the defensive side for Georgia in this matchup. If these two can jam on the boards and second-point chances, I just don't see any options for Oklahoma in this game. The better team's Georgia. They're also coming into this game with a 4-game winning streak. Georgia has all the momentum. They have the size, and they're led by former Gators coach Mike White, and he's done a phenomenal job this season. White, he's going to have his boys ready to go in this one. And I know the line's currently juicy. It is sitting at 2.5, but I'm not against taking them on the money line at -150 just to make it a pick 'em matchup. And I don't want to get beat on that backdoor hook. So my play in this one, I like Georgia here, and I'm taking them on the money line at a -150, Scott.
I tell you, I like what you guys are saying. I also, for the sake of the show, I like the under here, and it's come down a couple of points from where it was like 150.5. And I think Georgia can slam the door a little bit with Oklahoma not being at Lloyd Noble and keep this game under. So move down 2 points since it opened. I agree with that movement at 148.5. I still think the under is the way to go at that total. Let's head to the Big Ten, Indianapolis, where these games are being played. We got Iowa and Ohio State doing battle. Let me punch up. I didn't put a line in here. Punch up my Buckeyes. I'm in my line service.
Buckeyes 155.5.
5.5 on that, right?
Yep.
Okay. And I was going to say, Griffin kind of talked about this at the top of the show, that Iowa has just not been that good on the road. Don't tell the boys from Lincoln that, because, boy, did they get their butts kicked sideways on Sunday. Surprised me, by the way. So glad, I grew up in Omaha. So glad I was a Creighton fan. That would have been really depressing on Sunday if I wasn't instead of a Nebraska fan. But, Iowa's 4-11 since mid.
Scott froze on us.
Oh, I froze on you? Okay, I'll just come back, and I don't know what last you heard. But anyway, I was just going to say that this Iowa team, 4-11 since mid-January, they saved their season with the win at Nebraska over on Sunday. Ohio State clobbered Iowa over the final 30 minutes of that meeting back in January. They beat them 82-65, but was no match in the second half. Guys, what I like, the Buckeyes 31st and 49th in points per 100 possessions scored and allowed respectively. And Iowa can be terrific at times on offense. They don't defend well. I don't like them on the road. 342nd in the country, Griffin, defending the two-pointer.
Scott, we're on the same page here, man. This Iowa team, they're all offense. They rank 17th in the nation across offensive points per game. But this metric really only becomes bold when they're at home. When they're on the road, this metric just is inaccurate. It's nothing to me. So the question here is Iowa, they have the better offense in this game. Fran McCaffrey is going to need to play absolute stout basketball in order to slow down this Ohio State offense, because Iowa's defense, as you mentioned, absolutely terrible. Bruce Thornton, he's going to be the X factor in my eyes here for Ohio State, averaging nearly 18 points per game. If Ohio State can sustain that 2-3 zone defense and shut down Freeman and Sanford from the arc, there's going to be no answers for Iowa in my eyes. Again, we have a neutral site, and how this Iowa team is just so bad on the road, I cannot jump on board with them. I'm laying it here with Ohio State. Iowa's continuously been a letdown team for me all season long, and I just don't see them coming into this game and automatically changing their scheme of play. Call it what it is. Iowa isn't deep enough in my eyes. And Ohio State, if they tip off an early lead in this matchup, they're way better on the defensive side, and I think they're going to lock them down. I like the over in this game, actually, sitting at 155.5, and I also lean with Ohio State here laying the points in this one, Scott.
Raphael, I'm wondering if Fran Fraschilla is on the very hot seat if they lose this game. I was ready to kick him out of Iowa City back in late November, early December, because one of the things I like to do, and it's phenomenal, I don't have it in front of me, but it's playing on Iowa at home as a non-conference favorite of more than 20 has been gold, for many, many years. And I'm always 3-0 with the Iowa Hawkeyes by like December 1st. Because they always play a soft schedule. They're always laying 30. You lay the points and win by 40. It's crazy. Not so much this year. And I was kind of ticked off not getting that early jump on the point spread and on the books with the Iowa Hawkeyes when they were big favorites. I think they covered one and lost a couple, whatever it was. But your thoughts on this game? It sounds like Griffin and I are kind of in lockstep here on the Buckeyes and potentially that total.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch this NIT bound games. This is a fantastic game because none of them are going anywhere after this game, no matter how many wins you get in the conference tournament. But I'm a big Ohio State fan. Micah Parrish is going to be the big key for Ohio State. If he has a nice game and controls the tempo and takes control of this team early, then I think he's going to be one. He's the one that pretty much won that big game against Nebraska. It was 116, 114. I thought I was watching the Indiana Pacers Atlanta Hawks game when I was watching that game. But he was the main reason why they won that one. I like Ohio State. I want nothing to do with Iowa. They're 2-13 against their spread in their last 15 games. No, give me a break. They need a new head coach, and they're going to get a new head coach.
I think they do. They need some new ideas in Iowa City, and that school there's too much funding and too much alumni support to be, dicking around with 500 records and, 15-15, 16-15, those kind of records, and then failing in conference play. Let's head to Thursday, the Big East. It's Marquette and Xavier doing battle. Marquette laying 2.5. Total 145.5 this game at MSG. Kick things off for us, Raphael.
Yeah, this one's interesting. I loved Griffin's outtake when he said the money line. The last game we talked about 2.5 minus 155. This one's going lower, so everyone's betting the other side. So if you can get this one at maybe 250, I even saw a minus 145. I like the X-Men a little on the plus money, but if you're looking for a Marquette on the money line, it's totally different on 2.5. That means the more money is coming on the opposite side. But give me the X-Men. I 7 straight wins. I think they're the ones that are going to control the boards. Every matchup, whoever wins the rebound game wins the game, and I think the X-Men do this one. This one's going to be a fantastic matchup. I can't wait to watch this one. I'm glad it's a great time slot, but I kind of lean towards the X-Men plus the 2 points. Maybe that's the nerd in me because I like Marvel. I don't know, but I like the X-Men.
Griffin, I'm looking at Marquette, since February 1st, they're 4-6 straight up. And the wins came against DePaul, Seton Hall, Providence, and Georgetown. And they've dropped, they were 12th, power rated 12th by Ken Palm on January 31st. They're down to 26th in 1 month of basketball. Do they get back on track here? I mean, Shaka usually saves his horrible coaching for the big dance. He usually does well everywhere else. Somebody must have told him the big dance was starting in February this year.
Yeah, Scott. I mean, I'm kind of in the middle on this one. I'm on a totals play with this one. I mean, this Xavier team, they've been a sleeper to me all season long. And hats off to Sean Miller. The job that this guy has done has been absolutely incredible. Xavier with 7 straight victories rolling into this game. They've got 5 guys on this team that are averaging at least 10 points per game. I mean, they're deep, stealthy, and as I mentioned, they're very sneaky. The issue that I think Xavier is going to run into in this matchup is their tempo. They like to run up and down the court with a very fast pace. They execute on the boards and they're sharp from the perimeter. The issue is Marquette. They're a top contender in the nation, and despite the way they've been playing as of late, they're very sneaky on the defensive side, especially when it comes to steals and turnovers. Marquette, they've been here so many times before, and Smart knows exactly how to prepare his teams for the big game. He's coached at VCU, Texas, and Marquette. He's got a combined 11 total NCAA tournament appearances. Marquette's defense, in my eyes, is going to overtake this game, and their tempo should really eat up that clock. That is why I am looking at a totals play, and I like the under in this matchup. I also lean Marquette here if it's anything less than 3.5 points. So I'm on the under in this one, and I also lean Marquette here, Scott.
Let me ask you this much, Raphael. You're the man behind the counter here at Doc Sports. I looked in, the previous games that were played this year, 2 games. Marquette was a 10-point favorite in their meeting at home. They were a 4-point favorite at Xavier. Now they're in a neutral site, MSG, where neither team has an advantage. They're laying 2.5 on a neutral site after laying 4 at Xavier. Any thoughts on that from a line maker's perspective?
It's just the style of play that Marquette's been playing. I mean, you just said it. They have not been the same team. I mean, December, January, we were even thinking about maybe sprinkling some cash to win the conference or maybe make a Sweet 16 type of run. And now they've just been awful lately. And I think that's why the difference aligned, because everyone knew if we made it so high, X-Men money would come in like crazy. So 2.5, you can still get Marquette money line money, which I already mentioned that money's coming in, and you're still getting plus points. People buying a 0.5 point. I just saw it earlier when I was looking at some lines. People were buying up to 3 with the X-Men.
Good stuff. Raphael and Griffin with a money shot in a moment. But first, early action of the Big Ten on Thursday. It's Indiana and Oregon doing battle. The Ducks laying 2.5 here, 142.5 on that total. Oregon's kicked it into gear. They're 7-0 straight up going into the tournament, 5-1-1 or 6-1 against the spread, depending on when you got one of those lines. And that's Dana Altman, guys, in a nutshell. There was a 10-year run in Eugene when Altman's Ducks were 115-43 in the months of February and March. And they weren't so hot the last 2 years in this spot, but they're kind of looking back on track. The scary thing is a lot of people are calling this team their dark horse or their sleeper for the Big Ten postseason title. And you get a little bit scared of games or teams when everybody's on board. Pretty close contest won by Oregon last week against Indiana. They beat them by 9. They outscored them 19-3 at the charity stripe. I lean the Ducks here for one reason. I cannot go against Dana Altman in March. It's almost impossible for me to even say go against Dana Altman in March. Your guys' thoughts?
I'll jump in, Raphael. And I got to say, this Oregon team, to kick off the year, just as mentioned, Scott, I know now they finally turned it on, and this team is playing good basketball. They started this season off, and they were not good by any means. Very let down team to kick off. Now they've won 7 games in a row. Indiana, on the other hand, they're much better than I predicted entering the season. And they can beat anybody on any given night if they come out and play excellent basketball. The issue that I look at in this game is the last time these two teams faced off, Oregon won that game, I want to say by about 10 points, but Oregon hit 24% from the arc and 39% from the field. They truthfully they couldn't have played worse in my eyes. If Oregon can come out and solidify themselves from the field and hit that 3-point shot, I think they blow Indiana out in this matchup. I'm on Oregon in this one. I have no issue laying the points in this if it's anything within 4 points or less. Otherwise, I'm on a totals play, considering the fact that the last time these two teams did square off, Oregon still did put up 73 points offensively. And as I mentioned, their numbers were absolutely terrible. They couldn't have played a worse game than they did and still managed to capitalize on 73 points, which is not bad by any means. So I'd be looking at an overplay in this one. Raphael, do you have a current total on this game?
142.5. And it actually
I'm looking at the over. I was hoping between 140 to 145, I would be on the over in this one. So yeah, I'm on the over with this one, Scott.
Yeah, and I agree, by the way, with Oregon and Raphael. I was a little surprised it was only 2.5. I really was. I thought this was coming a solid 4. I really did.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was going to be a solid 4. And I mean, just remember late December, early January, everyone was writing off Indiana, head coach retiring. They're looking for a new head coach. And all of a sudden, they've been playing some good ball. But I just think Oregon's team speed, not in football and in basketball, if they were playing in both sports, I think Oregon's speed is just going to be too much. And I fell in love with Oregon when they went to Wisconsin. Sorry, boss, if you're watching the show, and beat the Badgers on their home court. I was really impressed with that one because that's not an easy place to go and steal a road game, especially when you're coming from the Pac-12. Oregon people don't even know what a cheese curd is. So then you go in their backyard and you steal a game. That was impressive. And I became a big Ducks fan at that game. So I think they roll this one. But yeah, I think this number is way up in my eyes. And I totally agree with Griffin. 142. I just thought it just dropped at DraftKings at 142 when you were talking. I think it's a great value because if you like Oregon, it's going to go under. If you like Indiana, then see how high this total goes, because Indiana would need to play a half-court game and try to make it a dull game. But Oregon and over, I think, is the play.
I have no fear of the boss. You know what I told him when I first came on board at Docs? I told Wade sitting in his backyard one day, you can't spell Badgers without B-A-D, without bad. So,
I never thought about that.
I left that for him to interpret because he could have said, we're bad. That's right, man. We're bad. Get out, But, so let him interpret that, and I moved on. So there you go. Anyway, guys, I told you my money shot already. Missed 8 minus the points over LSU. Griffin, your money shot for this week's show.
Yeah, I see a trap incentive here, Scott. We've got Gonzaga laying 3.5 points against St. Mary's with a total sitting at 136.5. And St. Mary's, they've already beaten them, I want to say 2 to 3 times already this season. I think it's 3 times if I'm not mistaken. Raphael, if I'm wrong, correct me. 3 times. Why is Zaga laying 3.5 points in this game is the true question. The last year, these two teams played each other actually in Vegas. I went to that game and watched it. And if you think Mark Few has not forgotten about that game, you best believe he hasn't, because they absolutely looked atrocious and they got absolutely blown out. St. Mary's ran them up and down the court. They killed them on boards. They killed them on second points or second chances in the paint. They did everything right. I think Zaga is going to come in here and absolutely hammer them. This is a public trap game because St. Mary's getting plus money. It's the market begging you to take St. Mary's, considering the fact they've already drilled them 2 or 3 times this season. Last year, they took them out to end their season. So looking at this game right now, laying 3.5 points, points. I think Zaga just comes in and throttles them on a mismatch. So my money shot, Scott, is taking Gonzaga here, and I'm laying the 3.5 points in this one.
I like the thinking. I also, for all the reasons you mentioned, but I also like sometimes you're like, why is this team laying this? Why is this team this kind of a favorite? They got manhandled twice. Well, not manhandled in the first game at St. Mary's, but, St. Mary's beat them. But they did show that they were awfully good when they got back to the kennel and wrapped up the conference season, basically the championship right there, regular season. And you look at that number, and I've heard a few people going, why is Gonzaga laying 3.5? Your way of doing it and thinking about it is the right way. And I suggest people get in that mindset of when everybody's going, I got to jump on St. Mary's because they shouldn't be getting points after what happened. Think of it a different way. Go outside the box a little bit like Griffin just did. Your money shot, Raphael.
I'm piggybacking this one, and I'm not saying this team's going to win, but I'm taking St. Mary's team total over 67.5 minus the 3 nickels. I agree. The reason why I like this play, I agree with Griffin, because I think Gonzaga needs to control the tempo. They cannot play a St. Mary's type tempo game, because then this one's a dead under, and they'll lose 5 out of 6 against St. Mary's. They've already lost 4 out of 6 against the Gales. I just think they need to control the tempo. They need to play Gonzaga ball. And I've heard this all day. I'm glad Griffin chooses play. Why is Gonzaga 3.5? Gonzaga is the 3.5 point favorite here because they're playing in the Kennel South. That's what they call it when Gonzaga comes to Vegas and goes to Orleans. Yes. They get so much money put on them. Griffin was there last year. It's always a Gonzaga crowd in there. It's Kennel South. That's why they call it. They have to make that to try to get lopsided money, to try to get some Gale money, because it's going to get flooded in with Gonzaga money. And let's face it, everyone knows Gonzaga. People don't know where St. Mary's is. If you don't know it's in California, they don't know what a Gale is. They think it's a bird. But I like the team total over 67.5. I just think the Gales are going to have to control the pace of that. Gonzaga is going to put the pressure on them. So I think both teams hit the 70 mark tonight. It's going to be a great game. I cannot wait to watch it.
Yeah, I'm probably heading down there. I didn't go last year, but I've been there like 6 or 7 years in a row before that. And you are absolutely right. That crowd's going to be 90-10 in favor of Gonzaga. And it's that way every single year.
Yep.
I met some Gonzaga people 2 years ago when Chet Holmgren was in his final season at Gonzaga. And the pride they talk with and they take in their team is like next level. It reminds me of UNLV fans back in the day with Tark. They just had that same mindset. They follow that team everywhere. And there's some, a lot of people down here that were Gonzaga fans before they moved to Vegas, and now they're here. So they'll pack that place. Good luck, St. Mary's. You better be able to slow that game down if you're going to win 3 in a row against Mark Few's club. Guys, before we call it a day, real quick note, if you are not yet a member at DocSports.com and want to give it a trial run, click on the link below the video. Get yourself set up for that free $60 account. You can find our plays each and every day of the week over at DocSports.com. And it's been fun, guys. We'll be right back here Tuesday, the 18th, 1 week from tonight. And we'll be talking some more tournament action, if I can speak, little March Madness style. For Griffin Murphy, for Raphael Esparaza, for our producer, Michelle, I'm Scott Spreitzer. Let's put him in the win column, everybody. We'll see you next week on In the Paint.